The rain poured relentlessly over the dense jungle, turning the earth into a muddy trail of uncertainty. The wind howled through the towering trees, whispering secrets of the wild, while distant thunder rumbled like the growl of an unseen beast. Somewhere deep within this untamed wilderness, a little girl wandered alone, her tiny feet sinking into the damp soil with each hesitant step. Clutching a tattered cloth to her chest, she shivered, not just from the cold, but from fear. She had no home, no family, and no memory of how she had ended up here. She was lost. The darkness around her was alive with movement. Glowing eyes peered from the shadows. Rustling leaves hinted at unseen creatures lurking nearby. Every crack of a twig sent her heart racing, yet she pressed forward, driven by a desperate hope that somewhere beyond the trees, safety awaited. But in the jungle, survival belonged to the strongest, and she was just a child. Then a deep guttural growl shattered the silence. The girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head toward the source of the sound. There, standing between the trees, was a beast unlike any she had ever seen. A massive lion, its golden mane streaked with rain, its piercing amber eyes locked onto her with an unreadable gaze. It was the king of the jungle. Terror gripped her, yet she couldn't run. Her legs refused to move. The lion took a slow, measured step forward, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its soaked fur. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the end. But instead of attacking, the beast stopped just a few feet away. A deep, rumbling breath escaped its throat, and for a moment it simply watched her, like it understood, like it recognized something in her that even she didn't know. Lightning illuminated the sky, casting the jungle in a flash of ghostly white. The girl barely flinched. Her gaze remained locked with the lion's, and in that instant, an unspoken connection formed between them. She was alone, he was alone, and somehow fate had brought them together. But what did it mean? Would the Jungle King protect her? Or was she merely prey? The girl's breath came in short, uneven gasps as she stood motionless before the great lion. The rain softened to a drizzle, but the jungle remained restless, filled with the distant calls of unseen creatures. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared the lion could hear it. Yet it didn't move. It only watched her, its golden eyes unreadable. She didn't know what to do. Should she run? Stay still? The lion's sheer size was overwhelming, its massive paws pressed into the damp earth, its mane wild and tangled from the storm. But there was something in its gaze, something that didn't seem like hunger. Slowly, she lowered the tattered cloth she had been holding, revealing a small pendant tied around her neck. It was the only thing she had left, a piece of a past she couldn't fully remember. She touched it absent-mindedly, her fingers tracing the cool metal, as if hoping it would somehow bring answers. The lion took another step closer. Her body tensed, every instinct screaming at her to flee, but her legs refused. Instead, she met its gaze, refusing to look away. Then something unexpected happened. The lion let out a deep, rumbling sigh and sat down. The girl's eyes widened. She had braced for an attack, but not this. The mighty beast, the ruler of the jungle, had chosen to sit before her as if it were waiting. But waiting for what? A loud rustling sound suddenly broke the silence. The girl's head snapped toward the trees, her pulse racing. Someone or something was nearby. She wasn't alone in this jungle, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The lion's ears twitched, its gaze shifting toward the noise. It let out a low, warning growl, the deep vibration sending chills down her spine. Whoever was out there, the lion had sensed them first. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the pendant. Was someone looking for her? Or was it something more dangerous? The memories of how she ended up in this jungle were still a blur, but an uneasy feeling crept into her chest. The shadows between the trees moved, and footsteps, light but deliberate, echoed through the night. The girl wasn't sure what was more terrifying, the unknown presence watching from the darkness, or the fact that, for some reason, the lion was standing between her and whatever was coming. The girl's breath hitched as the footsteps grew closer, each step crunching against the wet jungle floor. The lion remained still but alert, its muscles tense beneath its thick fur. She could feel its energy shifting. This wasn't the watchful stillness from before. This was something else, a warning. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the pendant as she took a small step backward. She wanted to believe someone had come to help her, but something deep inside told her otherwise. If they were here to rescue her, why were they moving so carefully, as if they didn't want to be seen? The wind rustled the leaves, and for a brief moment she caught a glimpse of a figure in the darkness, tall, lean, moving with quiet purpose, not lost, not searching, hunting. The lion growled low in its throat, a sound that sent a cold shiver through her spine. It wasn't just protecting itself, it was protecting her. The figure hesitated, as if weighing their next move. Then a voice, rough and unfamiliar, called out, "I know you're there." The girl tensed. The voice wasn't kind. It wasn't comforting. It carried something sharp, something that made her blood run cold. Whoever this person was, they weren't here to help. The lion stepped forward, planting itself firmly between her and the unseen stranger. The girl could feel the heat radiating from its body, the steady rise and fall of its breath. She wasn't alone, but was that enough? The figure didn't move, but she could feel their presence lingering in the darkness, watching, waiting. Her mind raced. Why was she here? Why couldn't she remember? She had flashes, running, voices shouting, the feeling of hands pulling her away. And then nothing. Just the jungle. Just the lion. The stranger exhaled sharply. "You shouldn't be here, kid." Her pulse quickened. The words sounded more like a threat than a warning. The lion's ears twitched, and in one swift motion, it let out a deep, thunderous roar that shook the trees. Birds erupted from the branches, the jungle momentarily bursting into chaos. The figure took a step back. Then, silence. The girl didn't dare move, her eyes locked on the shadows. She knew one thing for certain. Whoever this person was, they weren't gone, and they weren't giving up. The girl's fingers trembled as she clutched the pendant tighter, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. The jungle was still now, holding its breath, waiting. Even the rain had faded to a soft mist, as if nature itself knew something was about to happen. The lion remained rigid, its golden eyes locked on the darkness. She could feel its power, the quiet strength of a beast that knew no fear, and yet she sensed something else beneath its fierce stance, an understanding, a silent promise that she was not alone. The figure in the shadows had stopped moving, but she knew they were still there, watching, thinking, planning. A sudden whisper of movement came from the side. Her breath caught. There was more than one. Panic surged through her veins. She wasn't just lost, she was being hunted. She tried to remember. Anything. Who were they? Why did she feel like she had escaped something? Or someone? The pieces in her mind didn't fit, but the fear did. The urgency. The feeling that if they got to her, she wouldn't leave this jungle alive. The lion let out another warning growl, its body lowering slightly, ready to strike. Then a voice, softer than before, but laced with quiet menace. "That thing won't protect you forever." Her breath hitched. It wasn't a stranger's voice anymore. It was familiar, the tone, the way the words curled at the edges, sharp like a knife. Someone she had known. The realization sent ice through her veins. She wasn't just some lost girl. Someone had brought her here, someone who wanted to find her now. The pendant pressed against her palm, and suddenly the memory flickered, an image of hands forcing it around her neck, of whispered words she couldn't quite grasp. A warning? A message? The lion tensed beside her, sensing her shift in fear. The jungle remained still, but the danger had not passed. A branch snapped, and before she could think, the lion lunged, its powerful form disappearing into the darkness with a snarl. The night erupted into chaos, shouts, the sounds of a struggle, the pounding of feet. The girl stumbled back, her breath ragged. She had a choice: stay and wait for whatever came next, or run. Her feet made the decision before her mind did. She turned and bolted into the unknown, leaving the lion and the truth behind. The girl's feet pounded against the damp earth as she ran, branches clawing at her arms, roots threatening to trip her. The jungle blurred around her, shadows shifting in the corners of her vision. Her lungs burned, her breath ragged, but she couldn't stop. She didn't dare look back. Somewhere behind her, the lion roared again, the sound raw and furious. Then came more voices, low, urgent, filled with something she couldn't quite name. Not fear, not anger, determination. They weren't giving up. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She had to think, had to figure out what was happening, but the only thing that mattered now was escape. The pendant bounced against her chest as she ran, a cold reminder of what little she knew about herself. A flash of memory hit her, strong arms lifting her, a voice whispering, "Don't forget who you are." Who was she? Why had she been left here? And why did those voices in the dark feel so painfully familiar? A sharp sound, a whistle cutting through the jungle, made her stumble. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself forward. They were signaling each other, closing in. Her pulse roared in her ears. She pushed through the thick undergrowth, ignoring the scratches on her legs, the sting of leaves brushing against her face. Then, up ahead, something shifted, a flicker of movement between the trees. She skidded to a stop, her breath catching. A figure stood in the clearing ahead, blocking her path. Tall, silent, waiting, her stomach twisted, trapped. Behind her, another rustle. The hunters. She could hear them moving, stepping carefully, knowing they had her now. Panic clawed at her throat. She turned, searching for another way, but she was surrounded. The figure ahead stepped forward, just enough for the moonlight to touch his face. She gasped. The man watching her wasn't a stranger. He was part of the past she couldn't quite remember. His eyes locked onto hers, filled with something unreadable. "You shouldn't have run." Her breath hitched. She wanted to demand answers, to scream, to fight, but her body was frozen, trapped between fear and something deeper. The jungle around them held its breath. Then, without warning, the lion's roar split the air once more, closer and this time it wasn't alone. The lion's roar thundered through the jungle, sending a chill down the girl's spine. But it wasn't alone this time. Another roar followed, different, but just as powerful. The jungle was waking up. The man in front of her didn't flinch. His expression remained eerily calm, as if he had expected this. His eyes studied her, unreadable, calculating. "You don't remember, do you?" he said, his voice low but firm. Her fingers clenched into fists. "Remember what?" she demanded, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The undergrowth behind her rustled again, and before she could react, footsteps closed in. Another figure emerged from the shadows, A woman, her face partially obscured by the night. The girl's pulse pounded harder. She knew this woman, not just from fleeting memories, but something deeper, a connection she couldn't explain. The woman's voice was soft, almost regretful. You were never supposed to get this far? Her breath hitched. The words felt like chains tightening around her. What did they mean? Who were they to decide where she was supposed to be? The second lion appeared then, stepping into view, a magnificent beast, its silver gray mane shimmering in the moonlight. It moved with quiet power, its piercing eyes flicking between the girl and the people in front of her. The first lion emerged from the trees as well, positioning itself beside her like a guardian. The man exhaled sharply. Still protecting her, I see. The girl's mind raced. The lions weren't random. They were part of something bigger, something she had been a part of before she lost her memories. But how? Why? She shook her head. Tell me the truth. The woman hesitated, then finally spoke. You were meant to be taken out of here long ago. We searched for you, but something, her eyes flickered to the lions, kept you hidden. The girl's breath caught. Taken where? The man took a step forward, and the lions immediately tensed. Back to where you belong. She shook her head, stepping back. I don't belong to anyone. The woman sighed. You don't understand. You were never lost. You were hidden for your own safety. The girl's head spun. The pendant burned against her skin, as if it held the answers she so desperately needed. Her whole life, everything she thought she knew, was slipping away like sand through her fingers. The lions growled low, sensing her distress. The man's expression darkened. Enough, she's coming with us. The girl braced herself, but before anyone could move, a new sound shattered the night, something fast, sharp, cutting through the air. A whistle, not from the man, not from the woman, from someone else. And in that moment, the jungle erupted into chaos. The sharp whistle cut through the jungle air, and everything happened at once. The lions lunged forward, their powerful bodies moving like shadows in the moonlight. The man and woman barely had time to react before the jungle itself seemed to come alive. Branches snapped, unseen figures rushed through the trees, and the air pulsed with tension. The girl's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed planted. Something was about to happen, something bigger than anything she had imagined. Then, out of the darkness, another figure emerged, a young man, his face partially hidden beneath a hood. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and knowing. They lied to you, he said, his voice urgent. You were never supposed to leave. The girl's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? The man turned to the woman. You knew, didn't you? That's why you kept her hidden. The woman's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. The man beside her, however, had lost his patience. Enough of this, he snapped, reaching for something at his waist. But before he could act, the lions roared again, louder, fiercer, forcing him back. The young man stepped closer to the girl. You're not just some lost child. You're the reason the jungle protects itself. You're part of it. Her heart pounded. It made no sense. And yet, deep inside, something clicked. The way the lions had always guarded her. The way the jungle seemed to shield her from danger. The memories she couldn't reach. Were they locked away for a reason? The woman exhaled, her shoulders sinking as if accepting the inevitable. She was never meant to remember, she murmured. The girl's fingers curled around the pendant. It was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was the key to everything. And suddenly, she knew what she had to do. She took a deep breath and yanked the pendant from her neck. The second it left her skin, the jungle changed. The trees swayed as if whispering. The air thickened, and a strange energy pulsed through the ground. The man's eyes widened. No, but it was too late. The lions roared one last time, and a blinding light burst from the pendant, swallowing the jungle in its glow. And just like that, everything shifted. The sharp whistle cut through the jungle air, and everything happened at once. The lions lunged forward, their powerful bodies moving like shadows in the moonlight. The man and woman barely had time to react before the jungle itself seemed to come alive. Branches snapped, unseen figures rushed through the trees, and the air pulsed with tension. The girl's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed planted. Something was about to happen, something bigger than anything she had imagined. Then, out of the darkness, another figure emerged. A young man, his face partially hidden beneath a hood. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and knowing. "They lied to you," he said, his voice urgent. "You were never supposed to leave." The girl's stomach twisted.